Edgecraft Heirlooms, and I am super excited today to be coming to you from my brand new dedicated live stream nook, I guess we can call it, which is actually in my bedroom. Now the way I have everything kind of set up, I literally have no keyboard, so I can't type comments, and I have no way of opening up a second tab, so you won't see me wasting time on that. Hopefully Facebook cooperates and actually shows me your comments on the side like it's supposed to. If you're here watching, please make sure you throw a hashtag live in the comments. If you're watching on the replay, hashtag replay. It helps the algorithm kind of reach its little fingers out and find other people that might like to watch, because today what we're going to be talking about, ooh, dry lips, today what we're going to be talking about is how to celebrate Imbolc. Pretty much every holiday I do one of these streams about how to celebrate a holiday, and today is no different. Today, so we're going to talk about Imbolc because it's like a week away, which is super close. Hey Michelle, we're going to be talking about how to celebrate Imbolc today. Welcome to my new live stream space. But before we get into that, again, if you're here watching, hashtag live, hashtag replay on the replay. The first thing I want to talk about before we jump into, hey Rio Deluna, we're going to be talking about how to celebrate Imbolc. Going to be talking about the goddess Brigid or Brigid, depending on how you like to pronounce it, because everybody does it a little bit differently. And then we'll talk about Imbolc specifically, but I want to talk about Brigid because Brigid is sort of the goddess of this holiday. So she's kind of like a big deal. So let's talk about her, and then we'll get into Imbolc after. So Imbolc is said to be, oh, thank you so much for your compliment about my setup. It makes me really happy that I have a space for this now. We cleaned our entire bedroom so I could get this chair in here and the space I needed it. It's wonderful. I love it too. And I have a nice background behind me. It's lovely. It's wonderful. It's amazing. And I'm very happy with it as well. But Imbolc is said to be Brigid's sacred feast day. She was an ancient goddess from the Celtic in origin or Irish in origin. And she probably evolved from a few other goddesses originally. Hey Elle, we're talking about how to celebrate Imbolc, but I'm just starting with a little conversation about Brigid while we wait for folks to show up. Again, if you're here watching, please throw a hashtag live into the comments or a hashtag replay if you're watching on the replay, so other people can find us too. One of the reasons why people generally believe that Brigid is such an ancient goddess is because she has so many different aspects. She does so many different things. She also, interestingly, is depicted in all three stages of life that we see in the triple goddess, which is the maiden, the mother, and the crone, which is, interesting because there aren't too many goddesses many goddesses at all that you see shown in all three aspects, which is really interesting. So they're one of the things I love about Brigid is that she has a very close association to both fire and water at the same time, which you don't see that. Usually you find that one is connected to one or the other, but Brigid is both. So she's connected to the element of fire, which also has to do, she's also closely associated with blacksmithing. So a lot of times you'll see her with, oh, Brooke says she loves my new setup. I just saw you. Sorry, I'm like looking at myself and talking and didn't even realize that you said that you were there. I should have waved sooner, but I'm glad you like it. I love it too. If you want to get a closer peek at some of the details in this really beautiful chair, you can go check out my stories after. I have some close-ups that are really nice. I got this chair for $10 at a thrift store, so pretty good deal. Anyway, enough of that. I just get super excited about my successful hunting trips. So she's associated with fire, she's associated with blacksmithing, she's also associated with the sun. And yes, Megan, you did make it live. She's on Facebook. You made it. You're here in real time. Again, if you're here watching, hashtag live on the comments, especially if you're on Facebook, so I can see who you are, because otherwise it does not tell me who's here. It just gives me a little number that says somebody's watching. And I would love to know who is here so I can say hello to you directly. And as a reminder to everybody who's here, these are always intended to be interactive. So if you have a question, if you have a comment, anything at all, just feel free to throw it to the comments. I want to hear from you. This is supposed to be a conversation, not a show. So fire. She's also associated with water, like I said. So, let me back. I missed things from fire. Hold on a second. So blacksmithing, she's also associated with dawn, the time of day, the sun rising. She's also associated with spring. In a way, she's considered to be a flower goddess, especially when you think about Imbolc as sort of a very early spring festival. Which is why I have the flower filter on Facebook right now, or Instagram. It seemed appropriate. And she's also associated with death and rebirth, is associated with, I believe, women, mothers, and children as well, as far as sort of like the way that she guides souls from life to death and death to life, and so on and so forth. But we talk about water. She's also associated with healing, and then I said motherhood and childhood, which is sometimes more closely associated with water than fire, and poetry and music. She's also often considered to be a goddess sort of inspiration, and certainly again of creativity of the written word especially. Let's see. She is also a protector of animals and farms and farmers, so that's pertinent to Megan, who kind of has a very small collection of animals that she lives with. So Brigid is a great goddess for that too. So kind of interestingly, so I mentioned that Brigid was, an ancient goddess of ancient origin who probably evolved from several different goddesses who ultimately came down to one, kind of this one goddess sort of embodying all of these different aspects. That eventually, so she was worshipped for a long time by the Druids, by the ancient Celts, by the ancient people that lived on those lands. And with the invasion and the conversion, of people over to Christianity from paganism, they basically, she was the only member of her pantheon, or let's see if I cannot butcher this, the Tuatha De Danann, I think is how you pronounce that. I'm not a Celtic pagan, so if you are and I butchered that, I'm sorry, feel free to correct me. But she was the only member of that pantheon to survive the conversion of pagans over to Christianity. And she was so strong a figure, so popular among the country dwellers and the people that lived there, that they couldn't get rid of her. So instead of trying to squash her, so to speak, like they've done to so many other gods and goddesses, they decided to canonize her, and they turned her into a saint. And so Brigid became Saint Brigid, and Imbolc became Saint Brigid's feast day. And then I also have a note here that, as far as like how the Christians and the Catholics sort of like explained Brigid away, was that they claimed that she was a nun from the 5th century, that she had founded a monastery and convent at Kildare, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Again, Gaelic, not my strong suit. But on that site is also a shrine. They say that on this, that convent is supposedly on the site of a shrine to a former pagan goddess, Brigid. Basically, it just means that they whitewashed her, or, Christianized her and said, well, that's it, we're good now. And there is still a well in Kildare to this day that is dedicated to Brigid/Saint Brigid that you can actually visit, which is really neat. So that's what I have for Brigid. Now that we've talked about that, everybody seems to be here. We've got a few people in different places, so I'm glad you're here watching. I hope you enjoyed that little intro to Brigid. But let's talk more about what you came here for, which is how to celebrate Imbolc. Again, if you're watching, hashtag live in the comments, hashtag replay. Just literally type it out, #live or hashtag live, depending on your preferred terminology, and it'll help other people find us, and I appreciate that. That really helps me out a lot. So Imbolc, let's talk about it. So Imbolc is, when we talk about pagan holidays, pagan festivals in general, feast days, whatever you want to call them, Sabbats, oftentimes the ones that we celebrate in the modern, version of paganism are sort of an amalgam or a combination of lots of different traditions and holidays that have existed over history around the kind of same, season and period in the year. And Imbolc specifically, like the word Imbolc is actually Celtic. The festival of Imbolc, is Celtic in origin. Of course, there are other holidays around it, like Candlemas, which is, again, sort of the Christianized or Catholicized, if you prefer, version of Imbolc, so to speak, in St. Bridget's feast day. And then, of course, there's also others like Lupercalia and Thorablot, which I think I'm pronouncing that right. Again, I'm not Norse pagan exactly either, so don't quote me on that. I've only ever read the word. And then, of course, there are some others, but those are the big three. Although I have also the Feast of Vali, which was, I believe, Roman. So those are a few festivals right around this time of year that kind of led to where we are now. But Imbolc, as we celebrate it commonly today, is really based on the Celtic version, Imbolc specifically. And the word Imbolc actually means in the belly. which is referring to sheep who were often impregnated or pregnant at this time of year, which of course a big deal because animals reproducing meant, the ability to get wool, the ability to have meat, the ability to have milk as well, which leads me to the next thing. Is another word that was used for this holiday was, and again I'm probably going to butcher it, is oy milk, which actually meant ewe's milk. And a ewe is a female sheep if you're not familiar with that term. Because obviously they were getting pregnant, they were also lactating. So milk is a big part of the holiday, and so is dairy. So if you're looking at ideas for traditional things to bake or cook for Imbolc, dairy usually features very, very heavily for that reason. So Imbolc as a holiday is generally associated with the element of fire. But fire in the sense more like light, more than like heat. When we think of fire, like Beltane is often considered is a fire festival also, but we're talking about heat because things are getting warmer. It's the beginning of summer, whereas in Imbolc we talk about as a fire festival, it's a festival of light. So most festivals around this time of year, like a lot of the ones I mentioned earlier as well, are all kind of themed toward the idea of purification, which is really, really common. And the word February, interestingly, actually originates from a Latin word meaning, which is febrare, which again, I might not be pronouncing correctly, but it actually means to purify. So basically, the name of the month February is in itself an implication of what we should be doing this time of year, which is rites and ceremonies towards the goal of purification and cleansing. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, Imbolc is also very closely associated with Candlemas. In fact, I have a book that's about Imbolc that's published by Llewellyn, but it was like 10, 20 years ago when I was kind of fresh to paganism and witchcraft and all those things. They don't even publish it anymore, but it's actually titled Candlemas, not Imbolc. So they are often those words are kind of used interchangeably frequently, or they are slightly different. But it is sort of the Catholicized or the Christianized, Anglicized? I don't think that's the right word, but Christianized version of Imbolc. And this was a holiday that was started as a feast of purification for Mother Mary, the Mother of God. Within the, especially ancient Christian belief, there was a period of uncleanliness following childbirth, which we can all agree, I hope here is, bullshit, but follow me here because it's still kind of interesting. This whole concept was that, it took 40 days from the period that a baby was born until a mother could then re-enter a church and be purified so that she continued to attend regularly as was socially acceptable at the time. So Candlemas is actually 40 days after Christmas. So in the lore, they also believe that at that point, 40 days after Christmas, at Candlemas, was when Mary actually brought the baby Jesus to the church to himself also be purified. So we have Mary being purified, we have Jesus being purified. Also at that point in time, they believe that someone in the temple she brought him to prophesize that he would become the quote-unquote light of the world. So then again, we have the Christian church sort of like creating this connection between the pagan festivals and the version that they were kind of creating at that time to help, attract people to the church. So on this day, also frequently, especially in the modern world, all the candles that are going to be used in the church for the year are often blessed as well. So that's where a lot of where we get the symbolism of Imbolc with candles and light and fire, all to go back to purification. So then I have this question here is, are candles associated with Imbolc because of the sun, S-U-N, or the sun, S-O-N? And then my response to that is, does it matter? No, of course it doesn't really matter because, spirituality, religion, all of these things over history, they evolve, and that's normal and expected. And I don't think personally there's any value to kind of picking it apart because I think over time they all just kind of become one. If you don't like that idea, you can try to sift through and pick out what's one and what's the other. But at this point, everything is so interconnected, it's almost impossible to separate. Imbolc, fire, candles, if it makes you happy, go for it. Candles and light and fire, of course, are also associated with Brigid. But a lot of people associate more. Raylene DeLuz says, and that 40 days still stands with Latino Catholics, but it refers to the mother and child to not go in public. Oh, yes, you're saying in the modern day, yes, they still do that. Yeah, obviously, I don't want to be like, oh, I'm crapping on anybody's culture. I don't mean that, of course. I'm just saying, like, what I'm taking personal, I don't know, concern with is the idea that a woman is unclean because she's given birth, which is absolutely insane to me. But, you know, everybody does what makes them happy and what feels right to them. So, your mileage may vary. So that said, let's talk a little bit about ritual ideas, things that you might actually want to do to celebrate the holiday. So one of the things that's really common is the creation of corn dollies, or sometimes Brigid crosses. But basically, they generally use some sort of grain or wheat, or Red Luna says very insane. Very. Yeah, I think it's a little nuts, but like I said, everybody does what feels right to them, I guess. Right? All right. So corn dollies were often used. I was originally going to show off some really beautiful corn dolly figurines that were part of my Imbolc collection last week, but they sold, so I can't show you. But if you saw the image that I posted for today, both on Facebook and on Instagram, to kind of like be like, oh, I'm going live in an hour, it has one of those figurines in it, which is really neat. But they were often, usually what happens, they would create these dolls, and they would lay them in what they called a bride or a breed's bed. It could be as, ornate as an actual bed that they furnished and created for that purpose, or it could just be a basket or something they put, next to the hearth. And oftentimes, they might even use, corn dollies that were made at Llamas or Lunasa, and say, oh, this is a breed corn dolly now, and use that in the basket as well. And then the dollies were usually clothed in white. Again, representing purification. Also, the idea of being a bride, because it's called the bride/breed's bed, because it was believed at this time in the lore that breed would, what's a nice word for it? Copulate's what's coming to me, but that's not a very nice word. But you know where I'm going to here, is that, she would lay with, the god, and that they were, at this point in time, kind of like, creating fertility sympathetically in that way, in nature. And one of the ways that they would symbolize that is that they would give the doll a wand to hold. Oftentimes it was topped with a little pine cone or something, which is, a very phallic symbol. And again, so it was to represent fertility and representing the divine masculine. And it kind of neat, last year I had a ritual here where we actually made and decorated dolls, not corn dollies, but like I bought doll blanks offline and I added hair to them, and then everybody was given hot glue guns and fabric and little wands, and was able to decorate them and dress them as they wanted, and we put them all in a basket and we blessed them. And the idea is that that Brigid would come into the house and bless the doll, and then the doll would bring luck and blessings to the house for the whole year. Another thing you can do is you can do a vigil for Brigid, whatever. And you can light candles to invite her into the home and ask her for healing, fertility, and inspiration. That's a nice simple one, so if you're looking for something that isn't going to require a lot of planning or effort, that could be really nice. It's something that you can just do at night before you go to bed if you're comfortable leaving a candle burning while you're asleep, and leave it on all night. Sort of like a lot of people will do for Yule is similar, where they'll light a candle in the evening and hold a vigil for the sun to be reborn. Similar, but a little bit different. You could make, so I mentioned earlier in passing, you can make Brigid corn dollies, or another thing that you can make, similarly, are Brigid crosses. And of course I have one of those, but I didn't think to bring it in here with me, so you'll have to use your imagination here. Or sometimes they're also called sun wheels. So the most traditional ones are shaped, sort of like a cross, sort of, kind of. And I'll actually show you this because it shows you, I meant to show these earlier. I have a few items in my shop still that are Brigid or Breed, themed that I want to show you, but this in the middle here, this is a breed cross. I'll bring it a little closer so y'all can see. So you can see it's a cross, but it's a little bit off kilter, but the idea is, because of this shape, it kind of gives it rotation. So the idea is that it's turning sunwise or clockwise, turning of the wheel of the year, ultimately. So this is still obviously for sale in my shop. If you really love it, you can go find it. And then, so in addition to those, so the idea with the Brigid cross, why people were making them traditionally, is that they were said to keep away evil spirits and evil illness, and were said to bring in inspiration, good fortune, and health. So again, we're talking about the idea of making the crosses and inviting Brigid into the home and blessing them, so that they in turn would bless the home for the year to come. And of course, there are other shapes that were reminiscent of sun wheels or the wheel of the year that I could use too. So, like if you're thinking about doing this, you don't have to literally make a Brigid cross. You can make lots of different shapes, but usually they kind of were themed to the idea of a wheel or a cross or something that represents the sun or the seasons. Another thing you can use if you're like not super excited about the idea of working with, palms or corn husks or whatever. Michelle says, where do you recommend getting the straw to make the cross? Great question. That's a really hard question to answer. In the past, what I did, and I don't recommend this, at Lunasa, it's easy because I've literally just gone to the grocery store and you can't even shuck corn at the grocery store right now because of the pandemic, but before, when you didn't have to, or you could rather, they would just have like a bin where people would just like shuck the corn and leave it there, and I would just steal corn husks and bring them home, and we've made corn dollies with that. Of course, corn isn't really in season right now, so that's not exactly an option. So what I've done in the past for Brigid crosses specifically, if you can't get corn locally, and some of you might be able to, where I am, we don't have it this time of year. You can go, I actually went to Michael's and I bought stuff there. So you might be able to find something there you can use if you're finding something that you're purchasing that is dried and you need to make it a little more flexible. I would suggest that you buy it and soak it in water like overnight and see if that helps. It might not, no promises. I've not done that personally. But I was going to say, if you don't have the ability to get to an actual grain or straw or grass or whatever natural material you might want to use, another thing that people make sometimes, or some people call them God eyes. So you actually use basically popsicle sticks and yarn. So you take the popsicle sticks and you glue them into an equal arm cross, and then you wrap the yarn around it to create a design. And of course I don't have one to show you. You'll have to Google God's eyes. But obviously if you don't have access to the materials to make a legit traditional Brigid cross or sunwheel or what have you, you can do it that way too. Which is, again, a lot easier for most people to source. And then another thing that people will often do at Imbolc, Mexican stores have bags of dried corn husk. Wow, that's an excellent tip. Thank you for that. So if you want, and again, if you're going to use dried corn husk, you're going to have to soak it to make it pliable again, because if you go to bend it, obviously it's just going to go rip. I imagine that they're selling them so you can make tamales, but I have no idea how to actually do that or how to work with it because I've never done that, but I know that's a thing. So yeah, try it out. Hey Lady Headphones, we're here talking about how to celebrate Imbolc, and I was just about to talk about how one of the other ways that you can celebrate Imbolc, a lot of people traditionally will burn their Yule greens. So if you still have wreaths or decorations or even a Christmas tree, even if you still have only like a branch of a Christmas tree, to burn those. The idea is that you're kind of like purging us of winter, purging us of the old year. For a lot of people, this is sort of like leading up to the beginning of summer. This is sort of like the beginning of the ramp up into it. So getting rid of the old year. They also believe that it would keep away mischievous spirits and fairies, because fairies and fae lore was really, really big among the ancient Celts and the Irish people. Where was I? And of course, if you are regularly every year creating a Brigid cross or a sunwheel or a corn dolly, it was very common that you would burn it on Imbolc. So you would burn last year's corn dolly on Imbolc, and then the one you made this year, you burn next year. So it gave it a sense of continuity from year to year, which is a really big theme in a lot of kind of pagan holidays and festivals, especially the ones that are related to fire, actually. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, a lot of the traditional festivals around this time of year are themed toward the concept of purification. So it's a great time for spring cleaning, which, as I mentioned, I just created, well, my husband, I have to give him lots of credit because we both did it together. We just cleaned out our room today. We got rid of all the stuff we didn't need. We put together bags of things to donate. It gave me room to make this brand new space here so I could do these live streams and not be uncomfortable and trying to cover up what's behind me because it's ugly, which is what I've been doing. So it's a great opportunity for spring cleaning, getting rid of the old so you can make room for the new, both literally and metaphorically and magically and energetically and all the good things. Like I said, it's a great time to cleanse your living space, both physically but also energetically. If you want to tap into the theme of Imbolc as a festival of lights, you can actually take a candle, safely of course, and shine it into all the corners and nooks and crannies in your home. The idea is that you're chasing away any dark energy or any stagnant energy and bringing light into every part of your living space. So that's a really nice purification ritual too. And I don't think she's watching, I don't think she really does, but I have to give kudos kudos to my great aunt who kind of taught me to do that with candles as a purification and cleansing thing. But I love the idea, especially for Imbolc, especially for this time of year, if it's something that you tend to do annually or want to get into the habit of doing annually. So that said, if you are setting up an altar for a ritual, here are some things that you might want to include on said altar. Some colors that are associated with it as far as, for altar cloths and what have you. Red is a really popular color, often to represent fire or the sun. White, red for vitality also. White is also used often to represent snow and purification. And also I have black here. Oftentimes I see red, white, and black. They also actually are representing the triple goddess as well. So when you're doing red, white, and black, we're kind of tapping into that energy of the triple goddess, which I mentioned at the very, very beginning when we were talking about the goddess Brigid. She is herself a very clear and obvious triple goddess herself. So you're tapping into the crone energy, sort of like the getting rid of things to make room for the new. And of course green, because green representing the incoming spring, the new growth, new things coming, newness. Newness is a really awkward word. Some other, some deities that are associated with the holiday, of course Brigid, which we have given a significant amount of attention to. And before I get away from Brigid, I do want to show you, I have a couple of pieces of art that are in my shop that are of Brigid specifically that I want to show you so you know they're still available. And actually my entire Etsy shop is 15% off. Well, not entire, I say my entire Imbolc collection, 15% off right now. You can go find these pieces and more still available. This is I think this one's my favorite. This is a Brigid drawing and art piece, as you can see here. So, and again, there's a little bit of a glare, so it's hard to make out really well. Oh, there we go. So she's holding the blacksmith hammer here with the fire. She's holding the water jug at the bottom with the water pouring out. So I was trying to tap into that idea of Brigid as both a water and a fire goddess. I love this piece, and I love it with this frame. This frame was just like too perfect. I can't believe it. I don't know. I can't believe that I found it. It just seemed so serendipitous, but it's beautiful and I love it. And this one is in my shop right now, and you can get 15% off at this exact moment if you go and check it out. And then I have one other Brigid piece. This is tapping into Brigid as a goddess of poetry and inspiration. Here we go. Let me make room for myself. So this in the background here is actually supposed to be the well of Kildare, which we talked about earlier. We have the Brigid cross above her. She's pregnant, representing her status as a goddess of childbirth and motherhood. She has, it's hard to make out on the screen, but she has a feather tucked in here, and she's holding a scroll representing her status as a goddess of poetry as well. And again, I love this frame. These colors just seem so perfect for the holiday. Just so you guys know, on Instagram real quick, my phone just told me that it's getting warm and angry, so if I cut out all of a sudden, that's why. I am also on Facebook. But that said, other deities that are associated with the holiday are Brigid, Dagda, Bress, Danu, which is, I believe, the mother of Brigid in the mythology, Pan, Aphrodite, Psyche, who is a Roman goddess, some Greco-Roman folks. Some other things you might want to put in the altar would include, obviously, goddess representations like the lovely ones I just showed you. Flowers, especially white flowers, which are kind of like symbolize both the snow and spring at the same time. The most common flower that's associated with Imbolc is actually the snowdrop, which is a white flower, and it's one of the first flowers that kind of pokes above the blanket of snow in spring. I've never seen one around here, sadly, in the wild, but I would love to. Also, evergreens, like I said earlier, those are oftentimes burned in ritual. Corn dollies, Brigid crosses, we talked about those things too. And of course candles. And oftentimes people ask, what color candles? All the colors we mentioned already. Red, white, black, and green, perfect colors. You could also make an argument for silver, of course, and maybe gold. But I would stick more with silver if you have the choice. And of course, like I said, white works for anything. So if you're ever like, well, I want to buy candles, but I can't afford to buy every color, buy white. It works for everything. So that's what I have. That's what I have you for today as far as how to celebrate Imbolc. If you are here watching real quick, I'm going to sign off because if this is, I'm going to be uploading my Instagram recording here to YouTube, and I'm going to cut out the part that's after this because it's a little extra. So if you're here watching on YouTube, thanks for joining me. I hope that you found this useful. If you have any comments or questions, always feel free to post them into the comments, and I hope that you have a blessed Imbolc. Take care. Blessed be.